What's up, everybody? Welcome to the ATH Podcast. I'm your host, Jonathan, and I'm joined by Chase. Chase, how are you?
I'm doing very well. I'm excited to get on our second podcast episode here on the new and improved At the Hive. So
second podcast. Yeah. Thanks everybody who watched the first one and is back watching the second one and continues to hang out at the site. It's really, really cool. It's been crazy how much people have still hung out with us and stuff. But so we're going to talk about CBA. We're going to talk about postseason media availability, exit interview stuff, and we'll do some postseason awards and stuff. But we'll start with the CBA. It's been weird. So today or Monday, a bunch of more stuff kind of trickled out about mostly salary cap stuff. And I guess just to start on the whole, to me, it seems like the whole thing is very much geared trying to pull everybody towards the middle in both terms of player salaries and in terms of team salary restraints. Do you think that is fair to say?
Yeah, it's definitely looking not that it's not a deterrent right now, because there aren't a ton of teams that just blow into luxury tax year after year. But now it seems like the NBA is really stressing, they're trying to level the playing field financially anyway, and at least make it so there's a heavy deterrence to be a repeater tax team.
Right. I think I really, really like that they're making it more making it basketball, punishing basketball moves as opposed to just saying you have to pay money, because teams like the Warriors and the Clippers haven't gotten anything from it yet, but they're working that way. It's you go this far for the luxury tax, you have to pay so much money. And they're I do not care. And that's the Hornets and other small market teams or teams that don't have mega billionaire owners can never compete with that. And obviously they still have to follow the salary cap rules, but it's just acquire players however we can, and we just re-sign our own players, and we do not care how much it goes over. So now there's they can't trade first round picks, I don't know, 1 year further out than anyone else, right?
Yeah. I think every team now gets up to 8 years, I believe, or it's either 8 years and the teams that go too far into the tax get 7, or it's 7 years and they get 6. So.
It's one less, and then they don't get the taxpayer mid-level exception, which is a big deal in the offseason. And then they can't sign players in the buyout market is what I saw the first time, right?
Yeah, that's a
really big one. Yeah.
Those are the teams that are looking for buyout players typically, because that's how you get, quote unquote veteran help mid-season without having to actually spend a lot of money, even though buyout players are typically rarely impactful. That's still a pretty big thing.
I think it's I think it ends up being a bigger deal than people expect, or people make a bigger deal of it than it is, because they see normally it's big names that get added in the buyout market and they never, like you said, never do anything. But I feel it's always frustrating for fans when they see that some, vet gets bought out and they just all flock to the top 2 or 3 seeds in the East or West. And it's well, why don't we ever get to have any help? And then I think the buyout probably becomes more significant if they're going to people that are not that far into the luxury tax already. So I like all that stuff. And then the taxpayer mid-level exception just, I think, maybe reduces a little bit of the ring chasing and vets, right? Because now they have to go for minimum salaries as opposed to the getting their one free $3-5 million contract or whatever. But yeah, I think agreed. Big good for the Hornets, right? And teams like the Hornets, not specifically us, right?
Maybe not this. Yeah, but you're definitely right though. Imagine if this rule was in place last year, players on the buyout market would have been going to the Hornets, a team that's above 500, in play-in range. I could play a real role here. Yeah, maybe push us out of the play-in range into the playoffs or something like that, rather than being the 9th, 10th, 11th guy on the bench for the Bucks or whatever, just because you have a better chance at a ring. This is it's much more enticing for middle tier teams to be buyout market threats now.
Right. And then, so they got the buyout market and then teams, and then they still have to pay a ton of money. And then I think the other interesting thing that came out on Monday is that if you're over that second tax apron, it's twice in a 4-year span, your first round pick gets knocked to the end of the first round. If you have it,
that's there. These are I have no idea if these are exact rules are in place in European soccer, but it kind of reminds me of things that happen to teams that spend a bunch of money or are really good, or really bad, vice versa, getting relegated. Like it seems like stuff like those kinds of rules, like really doing like, front office like type penalties rather than, like you said, just being like, give us an extra $40 million. Like when the Warriors paid like $80 million for Kelly Oubre that one year.
Right. Like, and they don't
that
care.
will not happen again. Like,
no. Right. Because it's like, it becomes a thing where it's just like you have to start weighing more than just, can we like afford this? Now it becomes like, is this going to hurt our ability to build our team going forward? And I think so. I think that, and it is so like over the course of the season, it like helps the player pool, but also indirectly, like teams can't maybe retain players. Like the Warriors are probably less likely to keep the whole like Steph, Draymond, Clay, Jordan Poole whole like dynamic if these rules are in place for longer, because it's just like, even though we can like afford it, now we have to like, what are we supposed to do to build around them? We have like we have no tools anymore. The other stuff, I feel like, go ahead.
I thought the two-way contract.
That's
was what I thought that was, and the Exhibit 10 bonus rising from 50,000 to 75,000. The G League stuff there that I thought was really interesting too. And again, really benefits a team like the Hornets.
Right.
Small market teams are more likely to use those two-way slots to like really develop players and try and turn them into role play. Like we've already seen players that have, not necessarily two-way players, but I mean, Bryce McGowan's and Teo Maledon this year.
Yeah, this year was a good example of the two-way.
Yeah, exactly. But like, I mean, if that was in effect now, they would have had another player to kind of throw in there when injuries got tough. But like, even they have used players like Caleb Martin, Jalen McDaniels, like Devontae Graham played in the G League. Like all of these guys, like it could have been going back and forth developing in the G League. Like this is obviously something that the Hornets feel confident in their ability to do, and now they have just another way to do that via like a salary cap exemption that you can apply for to get that third two-way slot and essentially like expand your roster to 18 players from 17.
And timing wise, like if all the years to get that extra spot, the Hornets have 5 picks in the top 42 this year. Like, I still don't think they can use all 5 of them, but like that's one more swing they can take on somebody that they probably, if they can use that third two-way spot, that before there's just like, where else are we can't put all you guys somewhere. And now that's one more spot to put somebody that's like a developmental project, like you said.
And I wonder if the rise in the Exhibit 10 contract salary, for anybody that doesn't know, an Exhibit 10 would be a contract that a player signs that is like essentially a non-guaranteed training camp contract. That player gets waived in preseason or training camp at some point, and then previously they received a $50,000 bonus if they went to the G League affiliate of the team they got waived for and played there. I think for 3 months after the season
something
starts.
like 90 days or something.
Now it's $75,000. So maybe like we've seen it become more common for players to get drafted like in the probably 40 to 55 range and be on two-way contracts. Maybe if from 50 to 60, like players will get drafted and be on Exhibit 10s because you get that extra $25,000 bonus. You'll be, an affiliate of the organization. You get to go to training camp with the team. You're like locked into a roster spot per se, but because the offseason roster spots, even though they're way bigger, you still only get 20 players, including all of your Exhibit 10 players. So maybe that'll be something as well. So these are all good things. There's really nothing that has happened with this that is like going to hurt really anybody, but especially the Hornets.
No, it's all like the only people are the only like entity that would probably be like harmed by this are teams, the big spending teams that stay in the luxury tax. And then the only other side of it is like the rule about teams have to spend up to the floor to get like the luxury tax payouts for the teams that do go into the tax. But like it would have affected the Spurs this year. They would have had to not gotten their luxury tax money, but all that's going to happen is the team's just going to sign some like vet to like a 1 year, $20 million contract or whatever to get to the floor. So, which is good. It just gets more people paid. But it reminds me of like I think it was JJ Redick that signed with the 76ers a couple of years ago. And then there was another one that I can't think of that some vet signed some absurd contract for their value for like 1 year. And it was just like 1 year, $18 million. Like it's very obvious what this is, but yeah, players are getting paid more. Teams can't shell out as much money at the top. Feels like it's just, they're trying to kind of spread things out a little bit. which is good for everybody, especially teams like the Hornets who can't compete with the spending.
Exactly. I got to ask you too.
Yeah.
This is definitely the hottest button topic with the CBA. What is your opinion on the 65 game limit
Oh,
for
yeah.
postseason awards that we're going to have here?
65 is high, I thought. I mean, I'm cool with it, but it's you have like a very narrow or like limited ability to like sprain your ankle or something and still be eligible for these awards. But I think there's some exceptions to it. I don't know what those are going to be, but I like it on the whole.
Yes, I was like, I'm honestly, I'm not sure how into it I am, just because like it's players like, I don't know how to necessarily phrase this, but like injuries obviously matter and availability is a huge thing, but like how good you are doesn't necessarily change because you broke your ankle or sprained whatever and missed 2 months. And like playing 59 games is obviously like that would hurt your all NBA chances, but like somebody that was so good in those 59 games would probably just go from like first team to third team or second team to third team. Right. But like just being ineligible entirely, like I feel like that's really tough. Like players like LeBron, Anthony Davis, like Steph Curry, Damian Lillard, like they wouldn't even be in consideration for these postseason awards, which like it definitely changes how you like look at, because these are meant to be like historical reference points, it's like down the road. You know,
it's gonna really water down like the NBA third team is gonna be like not all stars and stuff at some point.
Right. Exactly. And and that's why it's kind of like it gets a little bit like sketchy to me, because like you look like 30 years ago and you be like, I was not alive or conscious basketball viewer when they were playing basketball in the early 90s or whatever. Right. I'm gonna go look up their all-star teams and all NBA teams, defensive player of the year, whatever. Like not every one of those players played 65 games in a year. So like if that it's going to really shift how you look at stuff. And there are exemptions, like it's like missing certain games and you have to play 20 minutes in at least 65 games as well as the threshold. But there's like conditions is like if you play more than 15 games and you miss like a hand like 5 games, then you get a couple of them back, and it's just like it's so much confusing math. I feel like when it's like obviously there needs to be something done about it.
It's like it's okay if you only play 25 or if you only play 20 minutes in 65 games, or 60 games, but you play 15 minutes in 5 of the other ones, then you're okay. It's like a bunch of weird stuff. I didn't look at all of it. Yeah, I think, and there's not like a way to put this in the rules. I think the problem with this stuff is that like the NBA more than any other sport, players are judged on averages more than aggregate, right? Like baseball, no one talks about like, I mean, they have batting average, but they don't say like home runs per game or RBIs per game or hit or whatever. It's just like how many home runs did they hit? How many RBIs did they get? How many hits did they get? Football, it's not like yards per game. It's like total passing yards, total rushing touchdowns, all that stuff. Basketball, if I told you like a player scored 2,000 points in a season, you have absolutely no idea if that's a good year or a bad year, right? And so, and there's no other way to make this a rule, but I think that is what makes this hard. I think if people were able to view the season more on like aggregate accomplishments, it's like you said, you get punished for missing games because your total impact for the season decreases. But you're like, if you're that good for those like 60 games, then you can be better than someone else's like slightly good 82 games.
Right. I completely agree. Like something like changing the scoring title to total points, like especially over the last couple of years, like that has become like I'm a huge proponent of something like that as well. Just because it levels the playing field a lot more than like per game accomplishments or anything like that can.
Yeah, so I guess next CBA we talk about everybody. We're just gonna start showing stats and totals. Like, this person.
Honestly, that'll be that. We should put that in there.
This is his 1,000th rebound of the season. Tremendous accomplishment. Moving on. The other thing. Pause. Are you hearing like weird sounds and stuff when I talk?
I don't think so.
I hear some like little like zip like yappy like little feedback clicky sounds. I'm gonna obviously cut this part anyway. So if it's good on your end, I'll just carry on.
Yeah, it sounds fine to me.
All right, cool. All right, next thing. So the Hornets did their postseason media availability, exit interview stuff. Players are always really boring. They always talk for like 3 minutes, and they just talk about how much they enjoyed the season, how much they like playing here, and how hard they're going to work this summer. Not a whole lot to take away. There's like the occasional thing of just like players like Gordon Hayward calling out like PJ Washington by name, hearing players talk about Mark Williams by name. But for the most part, I don't know. Did you think anything super fascinating came out of the player interviews?
That the thing that Hayward said about PJ Washington basically being like the glue guy for the team, I thought was pretty cool. But yeah, there wasn't a ton that I really got out of that. It's just because like so many players that like you'd really want to hear impactful things from, I guess, like LaMelo or Terry or Gordon Hayward or Kelly Oubre missed like a ton of time. So they don't really have as much to talk about other than being like, oh, I wish I was healthier. I'm going to work this summer on getting healthy, which is like what everybody said, or that they were just going to work hard and come back in the fall, or their free agency was coming up or something like that. But I thought Steve Clifford and Mitch Kupchak were a little bit, that gave a little bit more of an interesting exit interview, I guess.
Do you think Gordon Hayward has noticed that all of his postseason press conferences are exactly the same? He always talks about like injuries are frustrating, bad luck, just nothing you can do. And he's not wrong, but it's just like, I would feel weird going up there and repeatedly saying like, yeah, just unlucky again, fourth time in a row. Like no one buys it. Like, again, you're not wrong. Like he's not wrong, but no one buys it. Right. Like a casual fan watching that's like, okay, Gordon, sure. The other thing I think I saw a little bit of hand wringing over was when they asked like LaMelo Ball, like, do you want to be here long term? And he's like, we'll take it by the day. And everybody's like, oh no. I was like, oh. It's the same thing. Everybody says that stuff. Like,
yeah, right. Like he can't sit there and be like, I'm going to play for the Charlotte Hornets for the next 20 years. Like it's not a possibility for him to say stuff like that. So that's what he's going to do. Take it day by day. That's what we all should do. I think we could all learn a little something from that.
Yeah. Players will say that. Like, yeah, obviously I think you'd like to hear him say, oh, I want to play here as long as they'll have me. But we've also seen like Kyrie Irving say that and ask for a trade like 4 days later. Like these mean nothing.
Yeah, that's the other thing is people can change their mind. If he said it now, he doesn't necessarily have to think that in 4 years or whatever.
Yeah, so. Like the Hornets sit down at they sit down at the table to negotiate like an extension with them next year, and they're like, so yeah, here's the press conference where you said you're gonna play with us for long term. So here's your contract. Go ahead and sign it. You already said you would. But like you said, I think the Steve Clifford, Mitch Kupchak ones were much more interesting. Steve Clifford. The one thing that I like that he says, and obviously doesn't mean much, but he talked about like coaches he was going to study and stuff, and I appreciate just kind of like the candidness. And then I'm like, as much as I've kind of talked about, like I don't know if I didn't think he'd be around next year. I think we would have heard by now if he wasn't going to be. It does give me like optimism that he's like, I'm going to watch all of our stuff, see what I think we need to do better. I'm going to watch the playoffs to see what good teams do. And I'm going to watch like these coaches because I appreciate how they like adapt and how they change their systems and stuff. I'm like, all right, Steve, I like that. I like that. I like those words at least.
Yeah. For like all the flack that he gets or has gotten from his first tenure as the Hornets coach, he is like one of the better like basketball minds that is like available in the NBA. Like his answers in press conferences are extremely like detailed and on the nose, and he'll like explain why he's like his reasoning for doing certain things and making certain adjustments and playing certain players and running certain systems and whatnot. And he like really is like constantly trying to learn like about the current NBA.
Right.
Like the first time he coached the Hornets, they played really slow. Now, in his tenure as coach of the Hornets, when the roster doesn't at all fit like playing a slow team, they're one of the like best built teams to play an up-tempo offense. The Hornets finished the season in the top 10 in pace, like in his first year as coach. So like, of course, when the team is healthier and better, we can expect that to rise like even more. And that is the complete opposite of like how he coached the team the first time. So it's definitely a good sign that he like does stuff like that.
I know everybody was like, oh God, we're just going to post up Mason Plumlee like we did Dwight Howard and Al Jefferson. And I mean, Mason Plumlee did get the ball a lot, to be fair, but it was not the same. It was more like at the elbows to facilitate stuff. And then when we had Mark Williams and Nick Richards, more like prototypical bigs. it was like their pick and roll bigs. I think the other things I think that took away from his thing, I do like him saying like the culture was good, but that's the players. Like I had nothing to do with that. Like, good job. Don't take credit for not your thing. And then this isn't necessarily a him thing, but kind of going back to the LaMelo Ball thing, like saying some players would just like text him in the middle of the night being like, sorry, I played bad. How do I play better? And LaMelo Ball is one of them. And I think that's cool just because I don't think it's the persona that people expect out of Melo, right? I think he's got this like demeanor that I think people think he's arrogant and entitled and doesn't care and just like out there having fun. But like he does, like, it's nice to kind of hear that confirmation that he's a competitive player and that he's like listening to coaches and he's taking feedback and stuff like that.
Yeah, like Clifford said multiple times was like, LaMelo is a player that really wants to win.
Yeah.
And people definitely wouldn't say that as probably the first thing about him when they're describing LaMelo Ball, unless they were somebody that like really knows him, which is definitely good to hear that. Again, I mean, not that any like true Hornets fan that watches every game would think that he like doesn't want to win, because he plays like hard and contributes to winning basketball in a positive manner when he's on the court and when the Hornets are in a situation to play winning basketball. But it's definitely good to hear stuff like that. Clifford had a lot of good like individual quotes on players. He said a lot of good stuff about JT Thor as well. Yeah,
like thinks he can be a key piece and stuff like that. And then talked about Nick Richards and Mark Williams. They're like, these guys anchored our defenses, why our defense got so much better and stuff like that. Mitch I thought was not as normal Mitch. Like he explained fewer things and said more real things, I thought, than normal. You know what I mean?
Yeah, like, not as much like this is what the draft is and this is how it operates and we're going to call in our pick and send it to the NBA when we're ready to do so. I think it's because I would imagine that this season didn't go nearly as to how he expected it. So he probably has much more like real answers and right. He's like, I'm laying it on the table. This was difficult. Like
right. Because like he said, normally it's like, all right, so he would just like list off how many draft picks we have and what numbers they are and like who picks before us and how the draft lottery works. But I think he had some more interesting things. I think the couple things. One, he said this. He says this most years, but we're not going to go big game hunting. We as in the Hornets, and said that it sounds like he intends to run it back. Which I think people are probably frustrated by because of how bad this season's gone. But I don't hate it, given the pick that the team gets.
Yeah, right. Like given that pick, like there is a pretty reasonable avenue to like a very similarly constructed team, just with a couple of new additions and obviously some better health, like being much better than it was this year, at least like win-loss record. Like whether you're going to go from 4th pick to the 2nd round of the playoffs in 1 year, like obviously that would be a lot, but I definitely think like the team would obviously be better even if they just ran back the exact same roster and everyone just played more games. But add a little bit, and then especially that draft pick, and then I can see why he would think that, and that would be their point of view right now.
Right. And then so he thinks it's good enough to be a playoff roster, which I think it is too. And then like if you kind of like look on paper and assume everyone's healthy and you add like the one free agent that we think that's going to come back, and then the draft pick, like hopefully like a top 4 draft pick, especially if it jumps up to top 3, it's like that looks like a really, really good team on paper. So
yeah, right. Like very evenly balanced with like veterans and young players, like good now, good in the future.
Yeah,
it's there. Like people have, I think, like around not just Hornets fans or whatever, like anybody around the NBA, I think this season has clouded their judgment of the Hornets a little bit too much. I think. In terms of like their actual long-term outlook.
I mean, like this team won 43 games a year ago and should have been better this year if it weren't for stuff and health and like
they were a 500 team from February 13th to the end of the season. So I mean,
and that was
that out a little longer.
And that was with like half the roster, like all the good players being out.
Right.
So
yeah, LaMelo wasn't there for the majority of those games, and they went 500. So
yeah, and they're looking at a team next year where like you have like Kelly Oubre off the bench and potentially like PJ Washington or Terry Rozier or somebody off the bench, and then like, you know, if they get lucky, like there's players that can play like stars on a given night, like carry a team on a given night that have to come off the bench because the team's deep. Like it's a deep roster. So I don't hate the idea of running it back. I don't, again, doesn't necessarily mean he's going to hold to that. But I also, I don't see the Hornets doing anything crazy to like change up what they have. So, yeah. Anything else from those press conferences you think? Oh, one other thing from me. I did like that he kind of went on a tangent about Jordan Sternkamp. And he was like,
yeah,
guy does great. They lose a lot, but it's because we're telling him to do certain things and he does what he's supposed to do. And that's kudos to him for accepting losing all the time because we keep telling him to like play certain players and stuff like that. So I was like, oh.
Yeah, he's being like he's a good soldier. We very much appreciate it. Like, honestly, that is like nice of him though. I bet you the Jordan Sternkamp like appreciated that kind of like recognition in the exit interview.
Yeah, because he's like, you know, the coaches probably like their record to look good, and he's just over there. We're like, hey man, book night's coming down. He's got to play 40 minutes, and then he's like, okay, yes, boss. And then the Swarm go like 10 and 30, and just like. That's going to look real good on the coaching resume for future jobs, but he's doing what's asked of him.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
All right. So you want to talk about some postseason awards? Ready to hand out some trophies?
I think so.
All right.
I think so. Let's do it.
I got to do it in a new Zoom though. So, all right, let's hand out some awards then. We're going to do for the league and for the Hornets. The Hornets is going to be super fun because I don't is what a mess. Anyway, we'll kind of go. We'll save the best for last. I guess we should just start with Defensive Player of the Year since the NBA went and like ruined it and already.
I know they spoiled it for us.
I know.
Literally within minutes of us starting this Zoom to record this podcast.
I was getting my stuff all set up and then I like look at my phone. Anyway, so we talked about this before, but we both were going to pick the same person for the league, and Jaren Jackson Jr. Right. And he won. Yep. So like, good job us being like super smart and knowing who.
Right. We were ahead of it. We promise you. We both planned on this ahead of time. We just didn't have the opportunity to fully prove that to the listeners. But you have to take our word for it.
Yeah. But Jaren Jackson, like, good at defense. Also, I heard Cliff Kingsbury interview call him like the walking personal foul, which I thought was really funny too.
That is actually really awesome. I like that a lot
because I mean, that was the same thing he had in college too, right? Like he will block lots of shots and get lots of steals and play really good defense and just foul everybody. It's
Dylan Brooks, only 3 fouls in 37 minutes in the game one against the Lakers, though. So
I think that's the Grizzlies' recipe for success because Dylan Brooks is the same way. Dylan Brooks like leads the league in personal fouls every year as a guard wing, which is a wild move. For the Hornets though, who's our Defensive Player of the Year for the Hornets? Like, not really a lot of options, but who you got?
So I think mine is going to be, and this was a lot closer than I anticipated it being when we first went into this, but mine is actually going to be Dennis Smith Jr.
Ooh, that's a good pick. That was my number 2.
If he played more games, so he only played in 54 games, 25.7 minutes a game. If he played, maybe we'll say 11 more, so he would have passed the threshold for the future CBA. I think he would have been in consideration for all defense. Like he averaged 1.4 assists or 1.4 steals per game. He was one of the top 25 player in deflections in the league per game. His steal percentages and block percentages are all in the 85th and 94th percentile, respectively. Like every single defensive metric that he has, like per game or advanced metric, like total number, like they're all extremely high. And it showed like on the eye test too. He
for sure.
Like he really was like a big part of the reason that Steve Clifford's like defensive principles and like mindset was actually able to be instilled to like such a young roster that wasn't necessarily defensively inclined.
Right.
But I mean, he was like a menace at the point of attack. It was like one of the best like 1/2 like combo guard defenders in the NBA this year.
He made like, it's very hard for players to like make a super noticeable impact defensively as a guard. But
Yeah.
and then he also, like, statistically, along with all the stuff you said, the Hornets on the whole for a lot of the season were better when he was on the floor, just because they guarded so well. He didn't help the offense, but like defensively, he made up for it. Like defensively, like the defense was like near the top of the league when he was on the floor.
Yeah, he's in the 99th percentile in the NBA and points per possession defensively when he's on the floor. The Hornets are 10.7 points better with him on the floor in 1,300 minutes. So large sample size, and he quite literally affects the Hornets defense more than almost any individual player affects their team's defense in the NBA.
Right. That was going to be my other choice. And then I went Mark Williams just because of, like, I think this is also like an optimism pick, right? Because this is what we want from him long term. And then it's not all him, because this just is kind of like the Steve Clifford special of things, especially the defense, like always come together and like are really, really good the last half of the season. But, you know, the Hornets they were a top 10 defense the second half of the season when they swapped out basically Mason Plumlee for Mark Williams. He had times where he got bullied a little bit, but like, again, he's like kind of like the Dennis Smith thing, like super, very elite as a big in blocking shots and getting steals, which is not really a thing that he had.
Yeah.
Like coming into the league, and then just gobbling up rebounds and stuff like that. Like, you know, like I said, he got pushed around a little bit and got a little hesitant at times contesting shots, but on the whole, I think a lot to be excited about for him on the defensive side of the ball.
Yeah, he looks a lot more mobile in space, I think, than people expected as well. Like that time where he guarded Trae Young on the perimeter, blocked his three, grabbed the rebound, and then did the Euro step dunk to basically like seal the game.
Right.
That was like his like coming out moment for like Hornets fans and the NBA in general. Like he looks so much better like guarding smaller players and guarding the pick and roll, like containing the ball on an island than he did in college, or really that anybody thought he would like this quickly upon entering the league.
He's also got, and this is more of an offensive thing, but it's a big deal for on the, he's got really, really good hands, like grabbing rebounds in traffic and stuff, and like pulling rebounds away from people and hanging on to them when he does get his hands on the ball. What do we do next? Who is our, sorry about the dogs. Let's do sixth man of the year.
Podcast.
Yeah. I don't even know what she's barking at. Sixth man of the year. League first, and then Hornets. Who's your league NBA sixth man of the year?
All right. This is, I think, probably the most divisive award so far this year. I took Malcolm Brogdon, who, I mean, pretty much fits the traditional mold of a six man award. 67 games played, 0 starts. I mean, like it doesn't get much easier than that. Like, he was the sixth man. He played 26 minutes a game, averaged 15, 4, and 4, and shot 44% from three, and was a part of the reason why Boston finished the year with was the only team even relatively close to being a top 5 offense and defense. So I mean, that like one of the most like impactful players in the league. Emmanuel Quickly is obviously the other player that's most in contention for this award. He averaged the exact same number of, pretty much the exact same stats across the board, was slightly less efficient than Malcolm Brogdon, but was also playing a little bit more. And he did start 21 games and play in 81. Yeah. So he has a pretty significant games played advantage over Malcolm Brogdon as well. But Brogdon just like, he fits the mold of a sixth man of the year so much better than like almost any player that's won the award in recent years. Like he is like clear, and he's on a considerably better team as well, like which does have a slight effect, I think, for these awards. That was even though they're individual.
Yeah, that was my thing for Brogdon, was that like the Celtics are so much better than the other teams that had candidates for sixth man of the year. And I picked Malcolm Brogdon too. My question to you is, Malcolm Brogdon the best defensive sixth man of the year in recent memory?
Wow. I like off the top of my head, I'm definitely gonna say yes.
I just like I know it's off the top of my head. I was just thinking about it because it's like it feels
I'm
like it's
looking
always
right
like
now.
Jamal Crawford and Jordan Clarkson and like these like Lou Williams, like microwave scorers that can't like guard their shadow.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm looking back right now. Like the only guy that I can even really get close to considering was Manu Ginobili, and that was 2007,
Right.
2008. So I mean, the Tyler Hero, Jordan Clarkson,
Nope.
Montrezl
Nope.
Harrell,
Nope.
Lou Williams, two in a
Nope.
row in 17, 18, 18, 19. Eric Gordon, Jamal Crawford, Lou Williams, Jamal. Like none of these players are even relatively close to as good as defense as Malcolm Brogdon is. And Emmanuel Quickly is also like I think a very underrated defender and is like
Yeah.
really, really good like point of attack, but just doesn't have the same like size,
Right.
switchability, like imposing like length and size as like a point of attack defender as
Right.
Malcolm Brogdon has.
The other thing, this is just a random thing about Malcolm Brogdon, doesn't affect the award or anything, but also I feel like he's the most upright, really quick player. Like he like blows by people with his quickness, but he just like doesn't bend over to do it. It's always very strange to watch. Just my little Malcolm Brogdon.
Yeah, he's like he moves in like fully in like straight lines. Like he doesn't like he's not like shifty really at all.
Mm-mm.
Like he kind of just drives at the basket and there's just nothing you can do about it because he's like so much better at basketball than most of the people he plays against. Like he just is like, I'm gonna go right. Take a layup.
He like
straight line drive and takes a layup, and most of the time it goes in.
He's like he can accelerate super quickly, but like normally when players accelerate, it's like a big low stride, and he just like takes like the equivalent of a walking step and dribbles like waist high and just blows by people. And it's like, well, he looks like he has no flexibility whatsoever. But
hey, it works. To the tune of a potential sixth man of the year. Anyway, I'm very curious to see which way the like actual media NBA voters go.
Yeah, Bobby Portis is the other finalist along with Brogdon and Quickly, which kind of out of left field, but can't.
Yeah, argue. Honestly, I think our guy, Hornets legend Malik Monk. I think he maybe not should have been a finalist over Bobby Portis, but definitely could have been. Like he was easily one of the top 5, probably 6 men of the year.
He also just had like a 32-point playoff performance. I don't know what they're going crazy.
See, there you go.
Let's go. Oh, for the Hornets, who's the Hornets 6th man of the year? Just throw out the requirements. Just whatever you feel is best, because I don't know. Everybody started. Everybody played a lot. Just on your opinion, who was off the bench? Who was the best player off the bench when they came off the bench?
See, I had to go with Dennis Smith Jr. again for this one. The different discrepancy in between like games played and games started is easily the largest for Dennis Smith Jr. I think your dogs are in complete agreement with me.
Right? No, they're loving this.
Like they're making noise for Dennis Smith Jr. Rightfully so. But I mean, he had the biggest discrepancy between like games played and games started. Was like the most, I guess, impactful like in that bench role when he was coming off the bench. Like Mark Williams came off the bench for 17 of the games that he played in, but obviously his like big impact came when he was a starter. The other guy that I considered was Teo Maledon, because he actually played pretty much every game that he like made an impact in off the bench, except for down the stretch of the year. But.
Yeah. Mine. Let me just double check to make sure he like kind of qualifies. Yeah, mine's gonna be Nick Richards, because and I think he'll get because he only started 9 games out of 65, but like he significantly improved. We'll probably get to that more, but like he was funny, and I kind of feel bad for him because he was the backup to Mason Plumlee to start the year, and then like he had a week or two where they're like, all right, you and Mark are going to take turns playing backup center. And then the Hornets traded away Mason Plumlee, and they're like, all right, Mark, you're the starter now. Nick, you're still the backup behind the guy that you started over to start the season. But by far his best season of his career. And like, he was like 8.6 rebounds and a block a game. Especially early in the year coming off the bench, he was like an offensive rebounding machine. And he was converting like 70% of his field goals and stuff like that. And he's going to probably be the backup big for a while. And I thought it was, so I think him being like that key big off the bench really was a big, like one of the few bright spots for the Hornets this year. So yeah, that's That's my pick for that. And then Dennis Smith also, yeah, I can't disagree with that either, though.
Hey, we got a lot of highly qualified candidates here.
It's the toughest part. It was the like who came off the bench enough to be considered a sixth man, because like
right, that was the difficult part for me.
Everybody started a bunch like that wasn't supposed to. So that was, I'm surprised. I honestly was surprised he started as few as he did. What should we do next? You want to do Rookie of the Year or Most Improved Player?
Let's do Rookie of the Year. I feel like that one's an easy one. We can knock that one out pretty quick.
All right. Who's well, first, who's the NBA's Rookie of the Year? Also probably just pretty easy.
Yeah, right. That was exactly. Paulo Banchero was my pick for NBA Rookie of the Year. Like, so far and above in a way, like both like per game averages, total averages. I know, like, people, I think it was his effective field goal percentage specifically was the stat that people were using to be like, oh, someone that's this inefficient like can't win Rookie of the Year. But it's like he averaged 27 and 4, and he shot 43% from the field, which is like fine, like that's enough. Yeah. Like, obviously the advanced numbers are not going to look good when you shoot sub 30% from three. But like, the Magic don't have like a ton of spacing. They need shooters. He was easily their best like most offensive big man and like focal point in that regard. Like, there's nobody that really even came relatively close. I think people got like a little sick of like just saying Paulo is the Rookie of the Year.
Right. It's like it's like when they have like voter fatigue, but like when someone's so far and away and it like the winner of an award, like early in the season, people start to nitpick and be like, maybe we can figure out a reason. I think the fact that Walker Kessler and Jalen Williams are like the other two finalists is pretty clear who the winner is there.
Right, exactly.
like players that like a casual NBA fan wouldn't even know their names. Like who's Walker? Who is Walker? Which Jalen Williams and who is Walker Kessler?
Right, exactly. And then it's like Jaden Ivey like had a very good season for a rookie, but like he wasn't even coming close to what Paulo Banchero was doing on like a per game basis, and his team was significantly worse. Like, Jaden Ivey averaged 16 points and 5 assists a game. Yeah. And like he wasn't even getting close to that recognition. So it's just, it was so far and away. And Paulo for like the whole year.
And those, I think we've had such good rookies in the last few years. I think people are like maybe not realizing how crazy it is for a forward to average 27 and 4, right? Like, especially the 20 and 4 part, like to be like his team's like fulcrum as a rookie, even if they weren't good and he was inefficient with it, like that's very, very impressive.
Extremely impressive.
So like, yeah, I think he's pretty obvious. And then I think the Hornets pick is equally as obvious because they have like two rookies that play this year, and one was really good for a rookie and one was fine for a rookie, right?
Yeah. So I think that one is very clearly Mark Williams here. Yeah. So I mean, and if he had played in like more games, he might have been able to make an all rookie team. I would be shocked if he makes second team now, but I mean, still, like, definitely in consideration, I think, for people that watch like the totality of the NBA season rather than kind of decide their rewards earlier.
I think he also, and then just kind of to build off of that, I think he calmed a lot of fears about like taking him over Jalen Duren, right?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Because I know like Jalen Duren came out and had basically the best game of his career in the first game of the season, and everyone's like, "Oh God, the Pistons got a star." And Mark Williams came and get off the bench, and then you pointed out when you and I talked a couple weeks ago, their season-long averages ended up being like exactly the same.
Right.
So
like, and they do very similar things. Like, their flaws right now, especially, are very similar. Like, and then you could point at Mark. Like, if you're somebody that likes Mark, he's way bigger. So Jalen Duren has like a little bit more as like a passer or something. But like we've seen by now that there are clearly a ton of positives to both of these players, and it's not something that where anybody is hopefully anyway that anybody's going to be looking at in the future and is like, oh, that was you lost that trade or whatever. People like to make their verdicts.
Yeah, I think like you probably get a little bit more defense out of Williams, like shot blocking because of the length and stuff. But Duren maybe has more passing potential. It's just that they're fine. Both are good.
Right. Two players are good at once.
The same position. That's wild.
It's nuts.
Yeah, Mark Williams is the Hornets Rookie of the Year. I feel like next year when we have this conversation, it should hopefully be just as easy. But maybe it'll be. And then last one before the big one. Most improved player. That was a tough one too.
I'm like, I will be honest right now. I'm kind of still deciding it right now, like as we speak. You know what? You go first with this one because I'll see if I can be swayed at all.
Mine's gonna be Lauri Markkanen.
Okay.
And the reason is because, like, to me, like, not necessarily. I mean, I think he did take probably the biggest jump, but I always lean towards players winning this award. I feel like they should be players that not only like improved the most, but also took on like a different role, right? Like John Morant won it 2 years ago when Devontae Graham. We all were like Devontae Graham should win it, and I like it. Technically, might be right that he was like the most improved player, but like he went from being like the star of his team to like a better star of his team. You know what I mean? As like in that year, like Devontae Graham went from being like a dude that could barely is like a fringe NBA player to like the best player on his team. And that's kind of like why I took like Markkanen over like Gilgeous-Alexander or Brunson. I know Brunson's taken on a little bit bigger of a role, but they're both kind of playing a similar role to what they have in the past, just doing it better. Where Markkanen went from being like almost a throw-in piece in trades to like making the Jazz way too good by being their best player. Where the Jazz were like, oh my God, we were supposed to be losing games. And Lauri Markkanen is like carrying us to wins. And so that's why I went with him.
Right. Like if you had told somebody 3 years ago, Lauri Markkanen was going to be like in strong consideration for an all NBA team as a member of the Utah Jazz, they would be like, wait, first of all, he's going to be a member of what? And second of all, he's on the Jazz now. Like it would be such a difficult thing to process, but you know, I think you're right. Like the Devontae, I will do this in honor of Devontae Graham, who definitely should have won Most Improved Player that year. He jumped from like 4 points per game to 18 points per game.
I was just looking at it the other day when we were talking about this, getting ready for this. Yeah.
You're right. I was deciding between Lauri Markkanen and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander as well. And like the idea that like making the jump from an all-star to a all-NBA like superstar is more important. Absolutely. Like you need all NBA players more than you need all-stars. Like that, the math adds up on that one. But like the jump that Lauri made is so big, and like if there's an award that's geared more towards like, I guess like smaller name players or like role players or guys that aren't as like or like all-stars yet or on like the precipice of becoming an all-star, this is definitely it. Like, and I think it would be cool to see that like kind of not necessarily return, but become like the norm. Players like Devontae Graham or Lauri Markkanen like winning when they took a massive jump in role and like per game stat production.
Right. Yeah. Like Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is like I said with Ja, right? He went from an all-star leading his bad team to an all-NBA player leading his better team. Whereas like Lauri Markkanen went from like, who is this guy? I mean, he's always been a good player.
I remember the Hornets were like considering signing him like the year before he went to Cleveland. Like it was like,
I think it was when we signed Kelly instead.
Exactly.
And then everybody's like, why? He's not that good, and what's he gonna do here? And then now maybe the Hornets should have signed him.
Right. The Cavs moved him to the 3, and then it's pretty much history from there.
Right. Yeah.
Like, you know what? This dribbling stuff is pretty sweet. I'm gonna get good at this, and he sure as shit is good at that now.
I don't know if people realize too. He averaged 26 a game this year.
Like, he was getting buckets.
Big numbers.
Like,
yes.
Yeah, he was really, really, really good this year. Like him. It would I'm not saying he should be on all NBA third team because there are a lot of good players in the NBA, but it would honestly really suck if he doesn't get honored in any way, like other than the All-Star game, obviously, but
where he was the last
like
pick,
with any like right, but still like
yeah.
If he doesn't end up being honored in any way, like postseason, that would honestly really suck. Like he averaged 26, 9, and 2 assists on 50% shooting Like
He
that's
barely
crazy.
missed 50, 40, 90. He
Barely.
missed it. He missed it in all three categories, to be fair, but he barely
By
missed
like
it in each
2%.
category.
Yeah.
Yes.
He shot 49.9%. So he missed it by 0.1.
Yep.
And then he shot 39.1%, 0.9. And then he shot 87.5% from the free throw line. So he missed that one by 2.5%. He missed it combined by like 4%.
Right. It's funny that he hit none of the thresholds, but barely missed all three.
Yeah, right, exactly.
He's a 49, 39, 87 player.
It's like if you got like 9 points, 9 rebounds, and 9 assists. It's
Yes,
like
exactly.
barely missed a triple double, but also didn't get into double digits in any category.
Right. Yes. It's like, yeah, not even close to triple double, not a double double, not even a double double or a single double, but
right.
you were very close. Hornets most improved player.
I got to go Nick Richards for this one. This is
I'm going to double him up on his awards. Yeah.
Yeah. You alluded to it earlier. Like he by far, and especially like, I know obviously we're not taking this into account, but if you were to pretend to take in like their whole career into account,
yeah,
that would make it bolster the argument even further. Nick,
right,
pretty much went from last summer being like, is this guy going to be like a long-term rotation member? Like, we're not really sure if this guy's like somebody the Hornets are going to keep around for the future, to signing a contract extension and basically like locking himself in as like, I am like an NBA player. Like he's going to be a backup center or spot starting center for the next 5 to 10 years, probably, because he has more than proven the ability to do that. And he's been so much more consistent with it this year. And like the defensive like anchor ability has improved a ton. So that's helped them a lot.
Right. I think this time last year, we're talking about like, do we like, if the Hornets need to, they can just waive Nick Richards and eat the cap hit because it's small. I mean, like he's not an important piece anyway, right? Especially after they drafted Mark Williams. I know I probably had thoughts that like, oh, we're just going to ride out like his rookie contract. And then like, he's super replaceable. If we bring him back, we bring him back. If the Hornets don't, who cares? And then, like you said, he made himself like a legit piece. To put it nicely, put it one way, he made himself good enough that when the Hornets signed him to an extension, people thought it was a bargain.
Right. Exactly.
Which, like that, you have to be, yeah. So where people thought like, wow, I'm surprised we got it for so little.
That's a tough
money.
thing to accomplish too.
Right. Yes. Right. So he's on those like $5 million a year, I think, or something like that. Pretty small.
Yeah, and for 3 years too. So it's like a long term ish extension anyway.
Yeah, and then people were like, "That's what a steal, what a bargain there." And if you can get yourself to be good enough to be a bargain on a contract, then you did a good job. And then now, last but not least, and by the way, this is what's really funny about this too. If I'll get into it anyway. Who's your NBA MVP?
I got to give it to Jokic.
Oh, you're gonna give it a three-peat.
I'm giving it to him. I have like, for me, it's just like, who is the best player in the NBA? Like, if this is something that this is an answer that changes so much more often than it used to, which is like a really good representation of how the league. Like LeBron was the easy answer to that question. Exactly. Like we're really coming to be faced with this absolutely horrible reality that the sport we love is flush with talent. But I mean, for like 5 years, the answer to that question was just LeBron. Like hands down, no question about it. If you argued with it, you were just like a LeBron hater, basically. But now like that answer like legitimately changes like almost every day. Like it could be Jokic, it could be Embiid, it could be Giannis, it could be Steph Curry, it could be LeBron still, like even though he's almost 40. It could be Jason Tatum. Donovan Mitchell scored 71 points in a game. Damian Lillard also scored like this is what, like it's crazy like how often you can like look and be like, that guy was the best player in the league like in this specific like week or two long stretch. But I think Jokic occupies the most of those, which is kind of what does it for me. And his team is the best out of any of these, or except for Giannis, obviously. But out of him and between him and Embiid, his team is better. Obviously, the number one seed in the West. I just think that the offensive engine that he is as well is more impactful than the gap between him and Embiid defensively, which certainly exists and it can't be like overlooked. But I mean, the dude averaged almost a triple double. He had 25, 12, and 9.8 assists, and shot 63% from the field. Like he shot a career high percentage from the field after winning the MVP the last 2 seasons. Like it's getting easier for him somehow. Like how's that possible? Like it doesn't make any sense. But
so I'm gonna go with Joel Embiid because voter fatigue, and I'm the
that's
voter.
good. That's good. No, we needed to be able to spread that
but
out.
I do want to.
They both are deserving.
Right, but I do want to reiterate one thing on the Jokic thing. His on-off numbers are so funny.
They're like staggering. It's crazy.
By far. So what? Okay, so the Nuggets net rating is 24.8 points per 100 possessions better when he's on the court, which is by far the best in the league. Number 2 is Aaron Gordon, his teammate, and 3 is Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, another one of his teammates. So like they just kind of are there by proxy because either Jokic is so good, or their bench is also bad. But like that's the level, and then after that, it's like a huge drop to like a bunch of players that are like bit players that kind of have noise in their numbers. So yeah, his total difference, and so like all the flack he gets for his defense, like the Nuggets do defend well when he's on the court. I don't know if that's in spite of him or because of him, but like if we're grading how they affect their whole team, like whatever his individual shortcomings are, the team as a whole doesn't seem to be too badly affected by it on the whole, right? Like, yeah, he doesn't really contest the rim or like defend the rim well or like move his feet well on the perimeter, but the Nuggets make it work. So, but
right, he's like consistently one of the league leaders in deflections. Like,
right,
he guards at like pretty much at the level of like screens, which takes away a ton of like angles for passes and stuff. He's very smart positionally. He just doesn't have the like instincts, I guess, as a rim protector that Embiid or Giannis do.
Yeah, but anyway, I'm gonna go with Joel Embiid because 33 points a game, and which leading the league in scoring as a center is cool.
Yeah, that's again, like these are insane stats. Like,
as team no center, it is cool to see a big that's good enough to like averaging 33, 10, and 4 assists, almost 2 blocks a game. And then like, I'm sure like watching the Hornets makes him seem even bigger than that because like as a impact player, because when the Hornets play the 76ers, Joel Embiid is just like watching a man play with like 8th graders. Like he just dominates inside and just much too large of a human being. So, and then like all the advanced stuff maybe isn't quite the same as Jokic's, but like, again, and it's not fair to Jokic because, he shouldn't get punished for being good before, but like, I like seeing new people win stuff, new teams win stuff. So like, let's just give it to Joel Embiid. Like led the league.
It's totally fair.
Yeah. He's led the league in scoring 2 years in a row. And 33 points is a lot of points to average in a game. Most players would be very happy to get that like once. Like you got to get hot to get there. And he just every game, night in and night out, 33 a game. Not always my favorite way of like getting there because he just kind of like lumbers around, gets fouled and stuff. But it works. I would love to watch it if it was on my team.
Oh, absolutely. That like being a fan of Embiid, like especially after these last 2 years and like this year, he definitely has the timing on his side this year too. He had the best end of the season,
right,
between like him and Jokic and Giannis. So that definitely helps. And like just the fact of like there have to be, I mean, I think of it this way, like there have to be voters that are just looking at it like, damn, wouldn't it really be a shame if Joel Embiid's prime ended with him not getting an MVP? Like, once, like for all of the stuff that he's accomplished, like he needs to have that. Like he really, really does deserve it. Like even if Jokic is better, is more deserving, like Jokic has 2, like Embiid's really good. Like he needs one. We need like you said, NBA to be representative of how good these players are.
It's like you said. It's like you said earlier with like the game level, like the game restrictions and like about making people for all NBA. Like if you look back and like Joel Embiid doesn't have MVP, it's like, wait, why? He becomes like a trivia question in like 20 years, right? Like,
and guess what? Guess how many games he played in this year?
More than 65.
66.
Look at that. He
So,
did it.
we're cutting it close, people, already, and this hasn't even actually actually count for anything yet.
If we're talking about like giving Joel Embiid an MVP, like is also might be like a while you can type of thing, right? Because he hovers around that 65 game mark. And speaking of the 65 game mark, who is your Hornets MVP?
Honestly, like big reason that for me picking this player for MVP is because I think they're the only player on the Hornets over this 65 game threshold is PJ Washington.
Yes. Before you elaborate, so there's two. Nick was right at 65 and JT Thor's at 69. But
okay,
before we elaborate on why PJ Washington is our MVP, that I think in and of itself is like, this is how the season went. PJ Washington's the MVP. Now let's talk about why it's good. But I think just that award is like, that's kind of like a good way to season in a nutshell. PJ Washington's the MVP of the Hornets for the 2022-23 season.
Right. Like he started 28 games last year, and this year started all 73 games that he played in, averaged career high 15.7 points, 4.9 rebounds. He easily career high volume and field goal attempts, took 13 shots a game, was basically like one of the most consistently available, like top option scorers on the team. The efficiency numbers dropped like pretty much across the board, but like, what do you expect?
That's what happens.
Like he had to take like way more contested shots or like self-created shots or just shots that he's not necessarily used to taking like in rhythm in a game than he really will maybe ever have to again in his career. Like,
right.
Because unless the Hornets replicate this injury luck or injury misfortune this year, like he won't play a role like that again. He played 33 minutes a game this year. Like that's quite a bit for appearing in 73 of them as well. Like,
right.
He's definitely MVP. The production, the availability, the improvement that he saw both as like a shot creator, which I think people kind of underrated just because it was like it had to happen, but he did get like way better at creating his own like off the dribble threes. He has a really nice floater now, like shot fake a three, take like 2 or 3 dribbles into the paint. He can hit like a pretty easy looking floater. So that's a nice wrinkle that I liked watching from him this year. So
right,
like, props to PJ. Hornets MVP.
Huge props to PJ. Hornets undeniable MVP, because like I said, especially if we're using the games criteria, it's him, JT Thor, and Nick Richards, and like that's not even a fair fight. Like you said,
exactly.
Like you said, so like you probably don't want him doing it as much as he did this year, but it's good for his like development and long-term trajectory that he was able to kind of get exposure as like a shot creator. And because when he's hopefully playing on a team with better supporting pieces, those self-created looks are in more advantageous situations as opposed to like out of necessity. And so you have him like he's better able to like attack the basket, create threes off the dribble, and like get to the lane. And it's more like he can do that when he's hot, right? And when he's playing well, as opposed to like, hey PJ, I know you're like 4 for 16, but like no one else on this team can dribble, so you gotta like go for it again. But yeah, so yeah, I think he's pretty clearly the MVP. 16 a game, like you were saying. And I think his passing is really underrated because he makes these like random what was that pass like once a game, but like averaging almost 2.5 assists as a power forward / sometimes small ball center. Nothing like flashy, but he just like makes quick reads and he makes good decisions. And then his defense is much better than I think he gets credit for too, just because he can legit guard like 1 through 5, which
and he really can. And there aren't that many guys that can do that and also are career 36.6% shooters.
That's what I was going to say. I think we've talked about it before where like, I think sometimes we kind of look at the stuff in a vacuum, but like players that can like block shots, get steals, and shoot threes and like pass the ball decently well are like nowhere.
That player almost doesn't exist at 6'7". Like it's
right.
A very
other than like
combination.
Some like superstars, and it's like PJ in terms of especially like at a role player level. PJ Washington's good.
Yes, he is.
So good, and he gets his trophy. He gets his award, his Hornets MVP, as bestowed upon him at the Hive, for making it through this season. I'm excited to see what he does next year with hopefully, like a different role. where he's going to be like that, like fourth or fifth option guy that just like other team people, like fans of other teams don't pay much attention to. And then they're going to be like, how do we always lose to like teams, bad players, like PJ Washington going off on us? You know what I mean? Because that's what everybody always
like
thinks.
when the Hornets are like, why does like who was it that played for the Grizzlies? Like, I was Rudy Gay, right? That every time they played Rudy Gay, he would like score 1 million points. Chris Middleton is another one. Like, not that these players are like not good, but
they're like under the radar,
well versed. Yeah.
Anyway, anything else before we wrap it up? I think we've done a good job handing out awards. Very fair. Good job.
I think so. I think we did a great job. Congratulations to all of our winners. Your trophy is in the mail. Please be on the lookout for that.
Yes.
Anything that happens with if you don't receive it, that is not at the Hive.
No, we did our part.
Yep, we did. But
we've sent it out.
I think it was good. That was good to put a bow on this season.
Yeah, for sure. And now we shift to the draft. Everybody's favorite not basketball thing.
Pretty much.
So
easily my favorite non-basketball thing. I'm excited.
I'm super excited. So yeah, we'll have a bunch of draft content coming up now that we've kind of put a bow on this disaster of a season, and we need to get away from as quickly as possible. Thanks for watching. Thanks for tuning in, and we will see you guys soon.
Thanks, everybody.